Hi. When James Carter, a 58-year-old Army veteran, moved to the serene suburb of Willow Creek, he thought he'd finally found a refuge. Decades of deployments in war-torn regions, the heartbreaking loss of his wife, and a relentless struggle with PTSD and anxiety had worn him down. But this charming neighborhood, with its tree-lined streets, blooming gardens, and friendly waves from porches, promised a new beginning. At his side was Buddy, his steadfast 10-year-old Labrador retriever, who had been his anchor through the darkest times. Together, they settled into a modest home, and for the first time in years, James felt a flicker of hope, until that hope was abruptly extinguished. It started with a letter. One crisp morning, James pulled an envelope from his mailbox, stamped with the bold seal of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, HOA. As he tore it open, his gut tightened. The words were stark. Buddy's breed violated community regulations. The HOA deemed large dogs a potential danger to the neighborhood's safety and tranquility. The complaint traced back to a single event. A child had allegedly been frightened by Buddy during a routine walk. The parents claimed the dog had startled their son, though James knew Buddy had been leashed, his tail wagging as always. To call Buddy a threat was absurd. This was a dog who'd lie down for toddlers to climb over him, who'd nudge a hand for a scratch with the gentlest insistence. James shook his head, certain it was a mistake, a clerical error he could clear up with a quick chat. That illusion shattered when he met Victor Grayson, the HOA president. Victor, a wiry man in his late 50s with a meticulously trimmed beard and a scowl carved into his features, ran the HOA like a personal fiefdom. Order wasn't just a preference for him. It was an obsession. He'd lived in Willow Creek for over a decade, earning a reputation for enforcing rules with unyielding severity. Grass couldn't exceed 2 inches, trash cans had to vanish within an hour of pickup, and pets, in Victor's rigid worldview, were an unwelcome blemish on his pristine domain. Their first encounter was icy. Victor didn't offer a handshake or a smile, just a curt glare. "Mr. Carter," he said, his voice sharp, "we're tasked with upholding standards here. Your animal poses a risk. We've had complaints, and we can't chance an incident. Rehome him soon." James's jaw tightened. "Buddy's not leaving," he said firmly. "He's family." Victor's expression darkened. "Then you'll face fines. Legal action, if necessary. I'd reconsider if I were you." Victor wasn't bluffing. The letters multiplied, arriving almost daily, each one colder and more menacing. Fines began at $500, then doubled to $1,000, escalating with dizzying speed. Victor weaponized rumors, painting Buddy as a menace. Neighbors who'd once greeted James with warmth now averted their eyes. Some whispered behind cupped hands, casting him as a troublemaker. A few, though, offered quiet support. "Victor's relentless," one woman murmured over her fence one evening. "He's broken people before. Don't give in, he thrives on it." James nodded, grateful for the sentiment, but the pressure was suffocating. How could one man hold such sway? And how far would Victor push this crusade? The fight grew bigger than Buddy. It became about James's dignity, his right to live without a petty tyrant's boot on his neck. The fines soared into the thousands, each letter a blunt ultimatum: pay or face ruin. James felt trapped, like he was back in a combat zone, facing an enemy he couldn't see, with no squad to back him up. Buddy, blissfully unaware, remained his solace. 5 years earlier, after his wife died in a car accident, James had spiraled, grief and nightmares from his service dragging him into despair. Buddy had been there, resting his head on James's knee through sleepless nights, his steady presence a lifeline. Now, that lifeline was under siege. He tried reasoning with local authorities, driving to the county office with a folder of evidence, Buddy's training records, vet statements proving his gentle nature. But the response was a brick wall. "The HOA's bylaws give them jurisdiction," a board clerk said, barely looking up. "We can't meddle." James's frustration boiled over. "So they can destroy my life, and you just shrug?" The clerk's silence was deafening. Back home, the neighborhood's fabric frayed further. On walks, kids who'd once giggled and petted Buddy now darted inside. Parents shot him dirty looks or crossed the street. Friends he'd made over coffee or backyard chats grew distant. Missed calls, flimsy excuses. They were scared, James realized, scared of Victor's retaliation, of being the next target. He couldn't fault them, but the isolation stung. Nights grew restless. James lay awake, mind racing with fears. What if the HOA escalated? Could they seize Buddy while he was at the store? The thought of an empty house, of losing Buddy without a chance to fight, chilled him. He was running out of time, options dwindling. But surrender wasn't in him. Every hostile letter, every sidelong glance from a neighbor fueled his fire. He'd survived worse than Victor Grayson: war, loss, despair. This time he'd fight back. Unsure where to turn, James took a leap into the unknown: social media. He'd never been tech-savvy. What did he know about hashtags or viral posts? But he understood that attention could be a weapon. He contacted veteran networks and pet advocacy groups, laying out his plight. Help arrived in Sarah Bennett, a sharp-tongued journalist in her early 30s who'd locked horns with the HOA before. She saw the bigger picture. "This isn't just about Buddy," she said, leaning across her cluttered desk. "It's about power. They think they can crush you because you're alone. We'll prove them wrong." They devised a strategy. Sarah pitched a video for TikTok and Instagram: short, raw, and real. James balked. Who's going to care about an old vet and his dog? Sarah smirked. "You'd be surprised. You've got grit, and Buddy's gold. That's a story people will fight for." The video was simple. James sat in his living room, Buddy sprawled beside him, and spoke from the heart. He recounted Buddy's role in his survival, the HOA's heartless campaign, and his desperate need for support. "He's not just a pet," he said, voice wavering. "He's my family. No one should have that ripped away." The response was electric. Within hours, shares exploded, veterans, dog lovers, and strangers united in outrage. "This is sick," one comment read. "We've got your back, James." The hashtag Justice for Buddy trended, crashing the HOA's email and social media with support. News stations got wind of it, and local officials faced a barrage of calls demanding action. James felt a spark of hope he hadn't known in months. With momentum building, he hired Laura Evans, a seasoned attorney with a knack for toppling giants. She filed a lawsuit against the HOA, arguing their ban violated the Fair Housing Act and seeking damages for the fines and emotional toll. "This could change things," she told him, flipping through case files. "A win here protects others from this nonsense." The legal battle, paired with the public uproar, turned the heat on Victor and the HOA. James, once a lone figure, now stood at the heart of a growing movement. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Laura presented ironclad proof: Buddy's certification as an emotional support animal, testimonies from neighbors calling him a gentle soul. Victor's defense, a shaky mix of vague safety claims, crumbled fast. The judge ruled decisively. The HOA's actions were unlawful, fines were canceled, and they owed James compensation. Outside, supporters cheered as James emerged, Buddy trotting happily beside him. "We did it, boy," he whispered, scratching Buddy's ears. The story hit national airwaves. James appeared on TV, voice steady. It wasn't just for Buddy. It was for dignity, for a say in our lives. It ignited a push for HOA reform nationwide. In Willow Creek, Victor resigned, and residents demanded fairer rules. James, at peace, hung a sign by his gate: "Where Buddy stays, justice stands." The fight had been grueling, but loyalty and justice won out.